Hey guys, Dave here bringing you a belated spoiler discussion on Logan. The reason for it being kind of a little bit late is because I've been sick for a good while. In fact, there was a point a couple of days ago where my voice was just shot. I couldn't do videos. I couldn't do videos at all. And it's still kind of recovering, if you can't tell if it's coming across on the mic, but I'm still a little bit clammy. I'm still a little bit kind of foofy here up in the head, but I'm well enough to bring you this video. And another reason is because I'm also tinkering with the little setup here with a brand new camera. If you couldn't already tell, the picture looks a little bit different. Well, not the aspect ratio, but the lens looks a little bit wider. The camera's super close to me, but it actually looks like it's capturing all of this, and I think that's actually rather cool. And so I think I finally figured out the calibration for my camera, so I feel like it's appropriate now to finally bring you guys my spoiler discussion on Logan. So if you have not seen the film, I don't know what the fuck's wrong with you, but go see the movie, because you'll be doing yourself a humongous favor as not only a movie fan, but a superhero movie fan, and especially an X-Men film fan. This is one of the more definitive films in that franchise, and if you're still not convinced, then please check out my it's a plug if there ever was one. Please check out my initial review on the film on my channel. I'll post an annotation somewhere here. No spoilers in that one, so it's very safe to check out, and then go see the movie and then come back here to watch the spoiler discussion. But if you have seen the film, let's get started. First of all, real quick, I'm gonna give my thoughts on that Deadpool 2 teaser. I know everybody has already seen it. It's up on the internets thanks to the courtesy of the Merc with the Mouth himself, Ryan Reynolds, who posted it on his YouTube channel. Very funny, very cool, very creative and imaginative. I love that they took a joke, a running joke amongst the superhero genre, both in Marvel and DC, about the hero changing in the phone booth, and the audience thinking to themselves, what's happening when this guy's changing in real time? And they took that joke and used it to great effect in this trailer and set the right tone for Deadpool 2, because this was actually shot by the director who they managed to finally get for Deadpool 2 after Tim Miller dropped out, and it looks like it's in capable hands. I noticed there were a couple of differences in the online version to the theatrical version. The Superman overture that you hear when he's changing is kind of cut short and exchanged for like a 80s rock ballad that you hear where he's running in slow motion. And of course the inclusion of Stan Lee. They managed to get Stan Lee in there. He wasn't in the theatrical version, but he was in this online version. But besides that, it was pretty much the same exact trailer, and I still enjoy it till this day. So anyways, enough about that guy that we've already loved all throughout 2016. Let's get down to the Logan spoilers. So one of the first things I want to talk about is actually one of the first things that we notice when we kind of dig into about 20 or 30 minutes into the film, and that is the setting and where we find our main protagonists, Xavier, Logan, and I'll go as far as to throw in X-23/Laura in X-23/Laura in there, in that setting amongst the Mexican border, which is a very relevant setting right now. But the reason for why they're here is because there's no more X-Men. Mutants are still popping up here and there, but there's no actual X-Men that are kind of out there in the public saying, hey, we are the X-Men, we're led by Charles Xavier, we go to his school, blah blah blah. This is in I'm forgetting the year, but it's like 2020 something. It's not the not too distant future, where the world looks kind of grounded. It looks pretty similar to how it looks like now, but there's a couple of things here and there that are supposed to be a little bit more advanced in the technology and the way it's implemented amongst the world. And the perfect scene to kind of embody this is when Logan and Xavier and Laura are driving on the highway, and you have those self-driving trucks that are kind of switching lanes on their own without there needing anybody to drive them. And that was the perfect way to kind of symbolize, okay, this is like in about 10 to 15 years from now, 2017. So the world is not in the Days of Future Past apocalyptic type of setting, but it's kind of working its way there. And where we find our characters is where we find Logan is starting to kind of deteriorate from the adamantium inside of him, because it's metal. It's eventually going to rust. Even though Logan himself has self-healing factors, the metal inside him is not going to. So obviously that's going to start poisoning him, and he's not necessarily immortal. He just has long-lasting ability. So this is starting to cut his time short. And Xavier, it has a neurological disease that it can affect everybody. But this is fucking Charles Xavier. He's got, as they put it in this movie, the most dangerous brain on the planet. So when he suffers a seizure, everybody suffers a seizure. And I love how the seizures in this movie were filmed, especially in that scene in Vegas where Xavier's having the seizure and Logan has to get from the bottom floor to the top floor, and he's just crawling, and everybody's just like, and he's pulling out his knives, and he's like killing the dudes in the path, and it felt like a scene in a video game, but in a grounded way, where it felt like an objective for our main character to get from point A to point B, but it felt like a trudge that me as an audience member felt like I was just right there with them. And one of the poor souls that gets stuck in one of these seizures early on in the movie that I didn't mention in my review, only because he was barely in the trailer, so I didn't kind of want to spoil for anybody who has not seen that much marketing material. And that's Stephen Merchant as Caliban, I think was his name. He was a mutant who's able to detect other mutants in a nearby distance. And what I think some people might not know, some people might, but others might not, and that is that he is actually the mutant who was featured in X-Men Apocalypse. He was the albino character who was kind of going around and dealing with Psylocke and Storm, and Apocalypse visits him at one point. He was that character, only here he's played by Stephen Merchant, a different actor, and he was able to capture that character very well. He has that sarcastic British wit, but he was really good as that character because I have felt genuinely bad for him. The way he was being tortured by Donald Pierce and the transgen people, and I was hoping to see a little bit more of him, especially since we see his body, and there's a possibility that maybe they're gonna harness his abilities for later use. You got Xander Rice saying harvest his DNA. He seems useful because he's able to detect other mutants. I feel like we're gonna see more of that element later on, because even though we see the end of Xander Cage, wow, I just said that, Xander Rice and Donald Pierce, we see them get killed off by the end of this movie, but that doesn't necessarily mean that transgen as a whole is going to be completely obliterated. I'm pretty sure there's other divisions, there's other labs, there's other experiments, and maybe they're going to harness that DNA for later use. And speaking of X-Men Apocalypse, there's actually another tie that I didn't even notice up until I looked at the Wikipedia page, and that is that little line by Xander Rice saying, Logan, you killed my father when he was working on you, the Weapon X program, and not only am I trying to do this for the better of mankind, but I'm also kind of using it as a little backup plan to kind of get revenge on you for killing my father. Turns out that one of those random ass dudes that Wolverine killed in the hallway in X-Men Apocalypse was actually Xander Rice's father. Pop trivia: that character, the Xander Rice's father, who's just a throwaway character in X-Men Apocalypse, was played by Bryan Singer, the director. And since I'm talking about transgen and Xander Rice and all those people and all their experiments and how they created X-23, I guess this is the point where I talk about the one thing I did not like about this movie, X-24. This is the one thing I mentioned in my review that I think was very over the top, at least for the story of this movie is. Like, by itself, or at least in another movie, even in an Apocalypse, I would have accepted it. But here, because of how grounded and how somewhat realistic the rest of the movie is, when you throw in X-24, a legitimate clone of Logan just running around looking exactly like him, and then you get that scene where they're fighting together, though the choreography is nice, it's shot very well, it's very visceral, there's a lot of blood, there's a lot of slashing, and it does lead to a moment that was kind of heartbreaking, which is to see Xavier get killed right after his little scene that almost made me cry, where he was talking about how he didn't feel like he deserved that awesome night, which is actually referencing something that kind of went over my head. In fact, I have to look this up, but my girlfriend was the one to tell me that Xavier was actually responsible for the mutants getting killed off because he had one of his seizures and he just fried all their brains, pretty much, and he feels bad for it till this day, and Logan was the only one that was able to get away or was not there or something like that. But the movie was more than what it initially was. It was transcendent, it was poetic, it was dramatic, it was a character analysis. It was all these fancy words that critics often use to describe almost Oscar-winning films that you get later on in the fall season. But then when you bring in X-24, I'm like, oh yeah, it's a comic book movie. It's a superhero movie. It brings me back to that reality that yes, we are still watching a superhero originated property. That's not a bad thing. again, it's the only thing that just kind of took me out of this experience that I was starting to be swept by because of how different the tone of Logan was. That this whole X-24 factor, no matter how short it was on screen, it still stuck out to me. However, if there's one thing that X-24 serviced the story in the right way, is to kind of it's gonna be fucked up, but it was to bring death forward. Not only did it kill off that family, which I saw from a mile away they're going to get killed off, only because that entire segment of the movie kind of painted a parallel to The Last of Us. I'm not gonna spoil anything for The Last of Us if you have not played that game, and it's one of the games that people were comparing this movie to, especially from that very first trailer. But X-24 inadvertently kills off Xavier and Logan, and I don't know about Xavier, because there's rumors going around that maybe Patrick Stewart might come back, and this is in the future, so if they were to do a spin-off that happened in between this and Days of Future or Apocalypse or whatever, during the 90s, which is supposedly the next plan for the next official X-Men movie, then maybe they can bring Xavier back in some kind of capacity, and I don't think Patrick Stewart would mind all so much, but for Hugh Jackman setting the record straight, saying that this is his last movie, you can only do so many things with an actor that says, oh, this is my last movie, and usually it's to kill off the character. And so his death wasn't initially impactful to me because I saw it coming. I knew that he needed to meet his end, especially because of the way that this story is tailored, which is supposed to be this road to redemption type of thing, where this whole life, which is literally hundreds of years set, Logan has fought in wars, he's killed off so many people, he wants to die, he wants to find peace. But his true moment of peace was finding this other person who he can kind of love and save almost at the same time, and let that be his final thing to do before he goes out. And that way he doesn't live on longer to see potential dangers kill off the thing that he now cares for, which is X-23 / Lara / his daughter. Because even though he didn't actually procreate her, she's derived from his DNA, initially his daughter. So those final moments there upon the log there, those were very symbolic for and very important for the character, because he's finding this one thing that he finally got right, and he's like, yes, I saved you, Laura, and I genuinely care about you, and I'm the one to die first. I'm dying, I'm finally resting, and I don't have to watch you suffer, and I don't have to watch you be put in peril and put at risk. And now you can kind of be on your own, nobody's after me, nobody's going to be kind of putting you in danger for the sake of getting to me. And that is what I kind of took away from that ending, and that's why I found it perfect. And it was through this evolution and through the way that this scene played out that I'm like, okay, now him dying is kind of getting to me, and now it's kind of sitting with me. Now, almost a week after having seen the film, I'm like, shit, Hugh Jackman's not going to be Wolverine anymore. This is some shit. And this prompted me to actually go back and watch some of the clips online on YouTube of the Wolverine. And no matter what you felt about it, X-Men Origins Wolverine, I went back and watched some clips. I watched the Watch Mojo video of the top 10 best Wolverine movies from the entire franchise. And I'm just reminiscing, thinking to myself, man, this really hurts. And of course, the final capper that almost brought me to tears is Laura taking the cross, putting it on its side, and turning it into an X, and that music just swells as we cut to black, and it was like, that was perfect. That was fucking perfect way to end the film. And to be quite honest, I'm actually pretty glad that there was no end credit scene to kind of tease it off, because that was just the perfect way to end it. It didn't need an end credit scene. I'm glad that James Mangold said on his Twitter, not a huge fan of those end credit type thingies, even though you kind of put one in the Wolverine that to this day doesn't really make that much sense. But I'm gonna go ahead and put that one on 20th Century Fox. Really glad that they did not put an end credit scene here to kind of lead things off. Even though that ending, not only is it a perfect way to kind of seal off the movie, but I can kind of make my own assertions as to where they're gonna go off from here. Either the X-Force movie or those mutants, those kids that now have their powers and they kind of work together and are now gonna be led by X-23 or Laura. There you go. That's all that I needed to kind of take away from this ending, and there's no need to put an end credit scene. that, and we watched it in IMAX, and there was a shit ton of people in that theater, and they were all getting off at once, and the end credits were not as long as I was expecting them to be, so I'm like, okay, we're just gonna sit here. And we waited for that shit to end. So those were my full spoilery thoughts on the Logan film, with the review aside. Hope you guys enjoyed. Please let me know what you guys thought of the film, of all the key points and elements that transpired in this final swan song for Hugh Jackman's portrayal of the character. Do you think that it was the right take? Do you think that there were some things that they could have adjusted? And of course, being that this is a spoiler discussion, feel free to talk about anything and everything that you want to, from the littlest of details to the biggest things, from X-24 to the inevitable deaths of both Logan and Xavier. Please go crazy in the comments, like and share this video, and of course follow me on Instagram and on Twitter at DarkSpiderDavid, and of course subscribe for future videos coming very, very soon. I am set to be seeing Kong Skull Island on Thursday night, so hopefully my review of that film will go up on Friday. Please stay tuned for that, and of course, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on the next one.